These combat changes are looking to be really, really cool, and I am so excited to talk about them. Hello and welcome back, all of you amazing professional consumers of Pax Dei and Pax Dei related content out there. I'm Altari, the professional gamer, and this is another episode of the Pax Friday Review, the show where we talk about all the fun, interesting, new, and exciting information that has dropped for Pax Dei over the last week. This week, we got a preview of the upcoming combat changes for the fall big patch for Pax Dei, and there is a lot of exciting things to pick out here. We've got UI changes. Obviously, we've got some combat updates. It looks like a couple of new animations as well. And then one thing that a lot of people missed, and I'm not sure if these images are going to stay on the post or not because they weren't included literally anywhere else other than Pax Dei's website, and that is a preview of some of the new armor models that are going to be coming out, at least for the Inquisition. I really, really like the flavor of these armor pieces, and we're going to go and zoom in on a couple of those because, hey, it's on the website, it's fair game. I'm pretty sure they meant to include it, but who knows? We're going to look at it. But before we do that, if you enjoy this type of content, please don't forget to hit the like button. It helps this channel out a lot. Subscribe so that you can get notified whenever we come out with new Pax Dei content, and share with any of your friends who might be interested in catching up with what is happening in Pax Dei. We cover a lot of Pax Dei on this channel. We've been doing it for over a year and a half now, and we're going to keep doing it. So let's head over to playpaxdei.com and take a look at this spotlight on combat mechanics. I'll see you over there. All right, here we are on playpaxdei.com, and we're going to take a look at some of the combat changes on this post. And like I said, there are actually some screenshots here as well. We're going to zoom in on those after we go through the main post in the video, so make sure you stay tuned to the end of the video for that. But today's update, a great PAX Friday. It is the upcoming combat changes. Now, one thing before we talk about anything else on today's video is a reminder that Pax Dei requires an iterative approach. So any of the changes that we're seeing to combat, we need to look at it in the guise of this isn't an endpoint yet, even. This is a move in a direction. Now, I'll leave it up to all of you to say whether or not you think it's in the right or wrong direction. My personal opinion is that these changes are going in a really positive direction, and I like what I'm seeing. Obviously, I want to see more of it, and I'm excited to see what the future holds. But the fall update is going to include some combat updates that are very, very much so welcome. So let's see what some of those are. First and foremost, we have character movement, and they're changing where your initial kind of movement is going to be running, not walking. I personally don't agree with this particular change, but I think it's going to be pretty weird to go from idle and start running and then have to hit shift to walk instead. But then if you hold shift, you're going to sprint. I think that having walking as kind of your initial start, it leads to a little bit more immersion. It is a default where you're kind of being forced to walk and experience the world around you. Obviously, you can quickly and very easily turn that off. I mean, if you're just holding shift, your character is going to go from stationary to sprinting immediately. I didn't think it was that big of a deal, but I guess they got a lot of feedback from a decent amount of players that wanted this change. So we'll see what it does. Now, they also are changing swimming, making it less taxing and therefore reducing the stamina cost for moving through water. Again, these particular changes aren't the ones I like from this update. I think that swimming having a high stamina cost forces you to go through the world, as there's kind of these natural blockers, and we already can kind of reduce those blockers by having access to high stamina foods as well as stamina regeneration potions. But I don't think that should be something that's just readily available to players at the very beginning. And then for the players that have access to that, are we going to just be able to swim across an entire lake, whereas we couldn't before? I think while in some ways it's going to make it a lot easier to get from point A to point B, I think it's also going to really remove a lot of the immersion that players are going to feel by looking around different areas. So hopefully there are some other changes coming in the future that are going to kind of rebalance that. For starters, I don't understand why in the world I'm able to be in full plate armor and still swimming above water. It doesn't make sense to me. So hopefully there's some additional stamina penalties that get integrated back in when they start having differences in armor have different effects on your character as well. And then also they are going to be working on fall damage to ensure that there's consistency in allowing you to be able to predict how much a fall might hurt. Now let's get to the meat and potatoes of today's post. And this is melee combat. And they're making a lot of kind of iterative improvements to this system. First, they mentioned that there's going to be a automatic targeting, or not automatic targeting, but you automatically face your target based on the direction that you're looking in. So if you're pointed at or towards a target, you don't have to use the W, A, S, and D keys anymore to position your character towards an enemy. Your character is going to point towards the enemy based on where your cursor is, not necessarily where your WASD keys are pointing your character in. So great addition there. Then we also have the ability to interrupt our melee attacks. This is such a great feature to be getting added. I know that especially in PvP, being able to block, cancel an attack is going to be huge. Being able to kind of bait out with an attack and then you cancel right before you get committed to that attack, and then you force the enemy into a block or an attack or whatever it is, you can juke them out into doing something that you want them to, which then puts you in a beneficial spot. So I think that's really cool that we do have that, and we can kind of fake people in and out of doing attacks or doing blocks. And then this also goes into for spell casting, blocking, jumping, or performing any other special melee attacks. You just kind of will cancel out of doing your melee to do that instead. So really great that they're adding the ability to interrupt melee attacks as well as to interrupt other types of things like spell casting as well. Then they are also going to be including some new animations or retimed animations that will help improve the responsiveness, and then also add forward momentum to attacks. So we'll see that in the video here in a second. And then you'll also be able to aim attacks up or down to strike enemies at different elevations. One thing that I hope they include in this is that you are going to get staggered or maybe be prohibited from sprinting, or there's going to be some kind of penalty to being hit as a player in PvP. If it goes unblocked, you should get punished in some way, like in terms of running away, maybe not in terms of being able to attack back, but if your back is turned to an enemy and they actually get a hit on you, there should be a penalty to that. Then in addition, they mentioned that blocking will come with more meaningful consequences. This is a really, really important thing to have, having trades between attacking and blocking, and having players have to choose strategically whether or not they're choosing to block or to attack is going to be important. And there also needs to be a little bit more penalties to blocking once there are some consequences to successfully blocking someone as well. So it's great to hear that they're working on that. Then equipping and unequipping items is going to be much easier thanks to an input queue system. One thing that I hope this means they do away with is when you pull a new weapon out, your character's like fumbling around trying to pull out the new weapon, and that hopefully will fix it. Weapon swapping is something that is a keystone to combat right now because it allows you to switch through your special attacks. I have my opinions on whether or not that should be something that stays in the game permanently or not. I think right now we are using many different weapons because there's only one skill associated with each weapon. I think what that should tell mainframe is that players want the ability to have multiple skills on a weapon, and they'd be more likely to stick with a weapon and make a strategic choice for that weapon, as opposed to just having 1 through 8 slotted as the various weapons that exist in Pax Dei and then just hot swapping between them in the middle of combat. I think there should either be penalties for swapping out and changing your weapons, and there should be a punishable ability in like PvP to be able to swap your weapons if you don't swap at the right time, or you're leaving yourself open to some kind of opportunistic attack from an enemy. We'll go and watch this video here in a quick second, but then touching on spellcasting as well as enemies, cameras, and audio, we're going to go through all these really quickly. For spellcasters, they're working on reworking targeting. You're going to be able to, one, target more accurately. I know it's been a really shoddy system so far. In fact, you can kind of extend the distance that you can cast a spell on an enemy by just zooming your camera in as close as you can to your character. I think this means they're going to be changing that so that it actually works with your character position, not your camera position, which means more reliable targeting. But then also it shows you what you're actually targeting after you've already initiated the cast as well, because you can cancel your spells now. So maybe you're trying to pull something and your group decides to go somewhere else. You can cancel your spell cast as it's happening so that when your friendly mezzes that target, you don't immediately unmezz it because your fireball had a 1.5 second delay to getting to it. So being able to cancel spells is a huge add that I'm really excited for as well. And then spells will have casting bars. We'll see that in the video and we'll talk about it there. And they're also planning on adding some early game spells that you'll be able to unlock from small PvE camps. So that's great because small groups and solo players are going to be getting access to spells a lot sooner. One of the largest bits of feedback that I think players gave for this initial test for EA has been that a lot of players never got to the point of magic, and as a result, they felt like the game didn't have much progression. They didn't get that magic teaser that then allowed them to kind of power up earlier and then delve into more and more difficult content and know that there's a reason why they should be going into that difficult content to get more powerful versions of the spells they currently have or new spells or whatever. Next, they talk about enemies and they're going to have their attack animations revisited. That's great. Hopefully they become less stagnant and we get a wider variety of these attack animations where players who memorize or remember what certain attack patterns look like will be able to take advantage of those attack patterns. I know a lot of us have been murdered by the triple attack done by Zebians, and being able to identify that triple attack early on in the animation cycle so that you can respond to it and reward that response with less damage would be great. Hopefully that's a direction that mainframe's going there. And then also there's going to be nameplate changes. We'll take a look at that when we look through all the screenshots that we have for today. They're also going to be making some modifications to camera and audio where the camera system collision is going to be smoothed out a little bit and reduce the jumpiness that you're going to experience when objects block your view. Hopefully another thing that they're going to do is update where if your character perspective gets forced into a first person perspective, that you spontaneously just don't exist anymore in that state where your animations don't happen. Nothing happens until your camera goes back into a third person view. It's really, really weird and jarring, and a lot of players get confused by that bug. So turns out I forgot that that was a change. So I do apologize for that. They're going to add more distinct audio cues for things like when you have low stamina, so you don't have to be looking at the bar to know that you're getting lower in stamina, and some more grunt sounds for chained combo attacks. hopefully to get those cues, those audio cues for when is a good time to block. And then lastly, looking ahead, these changes are just the beginning, like they said at the very, very beginning of this article. And they do read our feedback and they make changes. I think some of the changes that we see in this current combat / movement update for the fall update is going to be telltale that they listen to our input. And while some of those I am not necessarily the most excited about in terms of movement, I think a majority of the player base did indeed request for those. And that's just emblematic of Mainframe's dedication to listening to players and making meaningful changes for all of us. So now let's go and take a look at the YouTube video of all of the combat updates in action. And I'll point a couple of things out there and I'll see you over there. All right. And here we are on the YouTube video. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit play and then we'll go through a couple of things. We might slow it down a couple of times as well, just to point some other things out, but it's 1 minute and 37 seconds. So it shouldn't be altogether too long. Here you can see an updated one-handed sword set of animations. The special attack is now kind of a jab as well. Looks like they added a couple more additions to the combos. And then right here, one thing that I found kind of interesting, you see that animation, that special animation / retargeting the player, even though they were moving backwards. I found that was pretty cool. And I think we'll see a lot more of that as the game develops, where your character is going to be kind of repositioning themselves regardless of where the camera is pointing or your character is pointing. Then here we have the two-handed sword and some updated timings there. It definitely looks more responsive and quick, which is going to be great. It's also going to mean that your response times for blocking and all of that are going to be updated as well. So you're going to have to be quicker to the draw or to the pull for all of those. And here is just a one-handed spear and two-handed spear. Again, you can see these updated combat animations. They're a little bit faster, a little bit snappier, which is great. Then we have a great axe. We did a full twirl attack there, which was great. And that was, again, a byproduct of the character taking a step back when they originally came in for the attack, which I thought was kind of cool. Looked like they were full on swinging up to get that hit, full on baseball bat to the head, Zebians. And very cool that we have these additions. Now they're showing the forward progression for movement. So your character is actually moving forward. And that, I would imagine, is when you're holding W and making these attacks. That forward motion is going to be great. Then we also have spell targeting and canceling. I really like the UI updates here as well, where you can see the names. I don't know how I feel about the levels kind of symbolizing difficulty. I feel like players should have to experience what those difficulties are and learn them and remember them. I feel like this is a little too hand-holdy for my preference, but maybe the rest of the player base, the general public, wants more information on the UI. But either way, one thing that you can see here, and I'll slow this down, let me put the playback speed to 50%, is you can see when the player is casting, it right now isn't a progress bar, it's just a percentage, but you can see that there is a progress percentage for how long it's taking to actually cast. That's definitely welcome. Now, what's going to be pretty frustrating if it's not done correctly is spellcasting can be interrupted by movement. In this particular case, it is interrupted because the character started moving backwards. So players are going to have to be really, really careful with how they're moving around and what they're doing, because currently you just cast the spell and you can queue up your movements as the spell's casting. And the second that you're able to move, your character will move. Now your character's just going to move. You're going to cancel the spell, and it's just going to be a little bit more difficult for that. So I think there might need to be a balance implemented further on. I could anticipate that some players aren't going to like this change, because of the fact that you can interrupt just based on movement. Maybe you should have to right click first to cancel instead of just being able to move to cancel. That would be something that I'd like to see more of. But either way, that is the full video for all of this. And now what some of you might have been waiting for, we have some screenshots pulled specifically from the website posting where we see new armor specifically on some of the Inquisition. And this is some very interesting armor, and it also is kind of a telltale of where we might be going in future updates in terms of maps and provinces. I'll leave that speculation to all of you, but let's go ahead and take a look at these screenshots really quick before we end the episode. I'll see you over there. All right, so first things first, let's take a look at these nameplates, and you can see that there are hostile NPC nameplates as well as neutral NPCs. I can't actually see who the neutral NPC is there, but then also the nameplates for players, both neutral and hostile. Now, for this, I also find it very, very hilarious that the Fox here is rated at a level 66. Now, these levels are another part of the combat update where players are going to be able to see the relative difficulty of these NPCs based on the number. Obviously, the bigger the number, the more difficult they are. I feel like this might transition into kind of more of a color code system where like light gray is basically not challenging at all, and then dark red or black or something like that is going to be incredibly difficult, nearly impossible for you. Now, what interests me there is then that means there's going to be relative kind of power calculations based on the gear that you have and your skill level. So this might be different for every player, or maybe it changes the calculation based on your party, who knows. Then here we can also see the party and clan members and how they pop up. What's really good for this is that party members have green. Now clan members have blue. This is going to be a really, really welcome improvement where you can see the different health bars of all of the players that you are working with or playing with. What I'm hoping for is eventually we get party and then raid member as well. Now here is one of the posted screenshots from the website, and there are two of them. And these were some of the most exciting things that I saw out of all of the update. And that is because take a look at this armor. So it's very pixelated and I couldn't enhance it really at all that much, but this is an entranced exorcist. We've seen entranced exorcists before. They classically are running around on these kind of cursed plains areas, or floodplains, I guess is what they're called, but they're always kind of solo and running around, and they cast their fireballs and they're super annoying, but they're also not altogether too difficult once you get past the wrought iron tier. Now, before, they were in all of these shrouded armor pieces. They look kind of spooky and all black, but that is not the case with what they are wearing now. These look almost like Moorish, and I don't know how else to describe it, but this to me looks like a kind of conical helm that then has some cloth that's put around it. And then we also have what looks to be leg length chainmail from chest all the way down covering the legs. And then there looks to be some kind of cloth that's hanging off the sides there as well. This is so freaking cool, and I am really excited to see where this goes. Now, the Moorish inspiration is maybe indicative. I know that the Inquisition, I think originally in the lore, came from a area known as Anatolia, and Anatolia is kind of a region that is inspired by more of the like Greco-Roman inspirations, cultural inspirations, and I think this is really close in line with that for that particular armor. And then as we move over here, we can see our, what I like to call is the adventurers party. I call it that because it's just like 5 different elite mobs that are all just grouped together, and you can see different armor for all of these as well. Now here it looks like they're wearing purple, but again, you can see it looks like for these they might be wearing longer padded gambesons, but then their chest plates are more of like a padded metal or like individually plated metal piece, a completely different type of chest plate than what we've seen before. And then there's also kind of purple. It is kind of unfortunate that we can't see the faces here, but I think that this might be something very similar to like a Centurion style armor or like a later Greco-Roman style of armor, probably on the more medieval side of things. But really, really cool that we're seeing some changes in armor already in the game. And I would imagine that if this armor is available to the Inquisition, then it's probably going to be somewhat available to players in the future. And I hope this is a sign that we're going to be getting a lot more cosmetic as well as armor variability in the future, hopefully in the nearer future. But that is all that we have for today. I know it was a lot to talk about. Hopefully I can fit this below 30 minutes, but if you stayed with us all the way through, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you found it informative. And if you did, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe so you can get notified whenever we post new Pax Dei or Pax Dei related content, and share this video with any of your friends who might be interested in learning more about Pax Dei or just staying up to date with the game as we all wait for the next update. But that's all we have for this episode. Until next time, I'm Altari, the Professional Gamer.